What do you do after a long break? Bake a long loaf of bread. And that's why I bake poppy seed baguettes. What a lovely day to bake. Moin, my name is Arne, German hobby baker living in Luxembourg. A long time ago, I already devoted myself intensely to the subject of baguettes in a masterclass. If you missed it, here's the link above. Back then, I compared many baguette recipes and learned from the techniques. But is it possible without a mixer? Yes, it is possible. I developed this recipe with poppy seeds for a work colleague, and it's really good. You will find the whole recipe in the caption. So let's get started. This is from Luxembourg with Loaf.
We start the evening before we want to bake by creating our levain. Therefore, we need 40 grams of flour and 40 grams of water. And then we add 5 grams of sourdough starter. We mix everything together with a spoon and then we mark the height with a rubber band. And this will then ferment at room temperature overnight. At the next day, it's time to make our main dough. Our levain has more than doubled in size, and we need additionally 460 grams of flour, as well as 330 grams of water. We need 8 grams of salt and 25 grams of poppy seed. First of all, we add the water to the flour. Leave a little bit aside. That's what we're going to use when we incorporate the salt later. Then we add the levain. As well as the poppy seed. The salt we don't add now. We will add in 30 minutes. But first of all, we need to incorporate all the ingredients together. So take your hands and mix everything. This takes around 2 minutes. Once everything is combined, you will cover it and leave it rest for 30 minutes. Then it's time to add the salt and add the remaining water, and then use your hands to incorporate the salt into the dough. Before shaping the dough, we want to double the dough in size, and that's sometimes a little bit challenging, especially if you don't have a plastic container where you can see through. And that's why I'm having here this little plastic jar, which I'm using to put a probe inside. Yeah, this is an alicate jar kind of, and we add like dough with 50% high of that glass, and the goal is to double that so it will reach the top of the alicate jar. And this will put aside, and then I cover the dough again, and this will rest for 30 minutes. After 30 minutes, it's time to do our first set of stretch and folds. Therefore, I wet my hands and then I pull the one side of the dough to the other side and tuck it in. And I'm rotating the bowl, and you will notice at one moment that there's so much tension in the dough already that it's enough. Depends always a little bit on the flour. This flour is quite good, so I already feel the tension after a few sets. Then I cover the dough again and wait for another 30 minutes. After 30 minutes in my alicate jar, nothing is visible, but I'm repeating now the stretch and folds again. This technique creates a lot of tension and helps the gluten to be developed. I cover the bowl and wait another 30 minutes. And after that time, it's time to do a first set of lamination. And this creates even more gluten, or that helps the dough to develop more gluten. And therefore I wetten my countertop, and then all you need to do is stretch the dough in all sides. The goal is to have a very thin layer of dough. So you really want to stretch out the dough as much as you can. It can be that you will have some holes in your dough. That's totally fine. As said earlier, that can depend on your flour. Sometimes you will have to repeat that process a couple of times. In my case, that worked quite well. And then you fold the dough back together and form a round ball. You can do that with your hands or with a dough scraper. Then you place the dough ball back in the bowl, cover it, and wait for another 30 minutes. And you see here the dough has risen a little bit. That's a good sign of fermentation already. And we do now a second set of lamination before the dough can rest. We stretch out the dough again. And then we form a dough ball again. And then the dough will rest for about 3 to 4 hours. So cover it again, and then you can wait. And all you need to do is have a look at your alicate jar, and you see here it is full, and that's exactly what we want to have. We want to have a double in size of the dough. And you see here also there's some bubbles on top, and this is always like a good sign of fermentation. So then what we're going to do is we want to shape the dough for making baguettes. And therefore we first dump the dough on our countertop. Can add a little bit of flour so that the dough won't stick. And then we want to divide that into 3 equal portions. You can use a kitchen scale for that, or you can just do it freestyle like I'm doing here. So take a dough scraper and divide it into 3 equal portions. You can also use the dough from the alicate jar and put it back into the dough. And then you form a rectangular shape. And I'll show you in a second what you will need to do in order to shape the baguettes. So first, form it into these rectangular shapes. And then we do the first step of shaping the baguettes. Therefore, we pull the dough from one side to the other side, and then we tuck it in with your finger so you can really press into the dough. This is the first step. Always put a little bit of flour on your hands so that you won't stick to the dough. And then for the second part, we press with our thumb into the dough and take the palm of our hand and pull over the thumb and then press the dough down to the countertop to seam the edges. And this is how it will look like. And then we repeat that process with the other 2 dough balls as well. So form the loaves. First step, second step. And then the same process again for the third baguette. And I've noticed that I haven't shaped any baguettes for, I think now nearly half a year. So it was not that easy. And then comes the last step of forming baguettes. And therefore you take both of your hands and then you roll the dough from the center to the sides. And then you can really like decide if you want to have sharp edges or you want to have a more similar result. And once you have done it, as I want to make poppy seed baguettes, I need poppy seed, and then I'm taking a spray bottle, and then I will spray some water on the baguettes, and then I will use my hands to sprinkle some poppy seeds. So first of all, I will rotate the baguette to have the seam on the bottom, spray water on top, and then sprinkle some poppy seeds. And then I have prepared here some kitchen cloths, and I have placed some flour on top. And here is where my baguettes will be placed upside down, so the seam on top. And then I'm repeating that process 2 more times. So once I'm done, I'm covering the baguettes with the kitchen towel or with these kitchen cloths. And they will then rest and ferment for another 1.5 hours. So now it's time to bake. Therefore I have here 2 sliding boards. So this one will be used to place the baguettes on a baking tray, or in my case here I'm having some parchment paper or baking paper. And then you can just flip the baguettes on the right side. Place them here on the baking paper. And the baking paper lies on another sliding board, and this is then quite easy to transfer them into the oven. But before we do that, we need to score the baguettes. And this is quite easy for baguettes. All you need to have is a razor blade or a lame or whatever, and then you make these 3 parallel cuts in a 45-degree angle. And then it's time to place them in the oven. I've preheated the oven to 250 degrees Celsius, that's 482 degrees Fahrenheit, and I will bake them 10 minutes with steam. I'm here having a pizza sheet, and I have also like these baking tray upside down placed above them to keep the steam. And then I will reduce the temperature to 220 degrees Celsius, that's 428 degrees Fahrenheit. And I will bake them for 15 more minutes. And then it's time to take them out of the oven. And look at these beautiful poppy seed baguettes. Have a nice color, nice sound. They look really, really gorgeous. So now it's time to cut one of these beauties. Let's have a look inside. Wow, this is a super nice open crumb. Poppy seed everywhere. And here's some more impressions. It's beautiful smell. The taste is amazing. Have fun when you bake them at home. And bon appetit.
I hope you enjoyed the video. I love poppy seed, and baguettes with them are also delicious. If you want to emphasize the poppy seeds flavor even more, you can simply toast them a little in the pan beforehand. But you don't have to. The rye sourdough rounds up the whole thing with a slight acidity and provides a full-bodied flavor. If you would like me to develop a recipe for you, please write me a comment under the video. If you enjoyed this video and want to support me and my channel, please like this video, subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you never miss a bake. I wish you a great day, and goodbye.